What's up, my people? Welcome to the BS Your Way Through Life show, where BS stands for Buffy-Style, and maybe a little about what BS originally stands for, or what you thought it did. This is where we talk about how to deal with life better. I want to help you figure out how to have a more positive life, full of enthusiasm, how to get your relationships to a healthier place, how to cultivate a chill attitude, get rid of your pettiness, and replace it with positive outlooks. Understand what's really worth getting upset about and what's not. How to find the funny in everything. How to become a better you. My name is Buffy-Style Larson, and I created the slogan, BS Your Way Through Life, with a double meaning. It doesn't just mean doing it the Buffy-style way. It also means doing things your way and not doing things perfect. Just doing your best. Let's get started, my friends. It's time to start BSing your way through life. Let's rock this thing. Hey, my friends. I'm so excited to tell you that I am in the works of launching my first ever marriage healing course. It's called Unchained Marriage, and I love this title. And the reason why I chose this title is because sometimes we can feel held back, bogged down, or a little trapped in our marriage. But I'm here to tell you that this should never be the vibe of marriage. And I'm here to teach you how to have true joy in your marriage and rise to a higher way of doing marriage and kicking those petty, unnecessary things in your marriage to the curb. How to go from masochism to meekness and what the difference is. If you find that your marriage holds more frustration than joy, then you need this. This should be a game changer that so many people need. So look forward to the coming months for more info and updates. Let's rock this thing.
All right. Welcome back to the BSUA podcast show. We are here. We're going to have a fun little casual conversation. We're calling it Tea Talk with Jane. Yes. Jane and I are always having conversations and such about the world and how to solve its problems. So we decided to get on and do all a favor and solve more world problems. Today we're talking about how to see through the layers of your spouse or whatever. So like there's many layers. Like on the surface, it may look like they're just mad at you, but really there's layers to this. So we are going to pick this apart for you all. And yeah, so Jane has some example stories for us. She's going to share to start us off. So
Woohoo. I am Jane. Thank you for hosting me on your podcast today.
Thank you for coming again. I always enjoy you.
So some background on me. I have been married for 14 years. You know, me and Michael never keep track of our anniversary. We're always asking each other, when did we get married? Like
that's real love right there. When you're just like, we just enjoy being married to each other. Time doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Like, every year it's like, were we married on this day or this day? And I'm like, I don't remember. And I have to refer back to the calendar. Like, we were married on this day. Anyway, we're both bad at it. So, so some more context. So I am active duty Army right now for my full-time job. I'm an Army recruiter. And I say this because that ties directly into the example I'm going to give. I'm an active duty recruiter here in Central California. Michael, he is unemployed right now. Anyway, okay, so that's the background. So seeing through your husband's layers, I'm going to provide two examples. The first example is when I first learned about the layers, and then the second example when I got to practice the layers. The first example is going to be a little sad because it was a very tumultuous, I can't even say that word, tumultuous evening for us due to me and my misunderstanding of his intentions. So we'll get there. So, okay, this was about, I don't remember. I think it was back in December. So I was having some pay issues through the Army. Nothing I did wrong. It was 100% verified. The Army messed up on my paycheck. So I was getting a short paycheck for until it was going to be resolved. And this was trickling down until we had to start deciding what bills to pay and what bills not to pay. Like, it was a big problem, and I was doing everything I could to resolve it. And one evening I came home, and Michael asked me, he's like, okay, so Jane, what have you, what, because understand, Michael is helpless. He's at home, literally can't do anything to fix my problem. This is the problem. I can fix this. And so he's feeling helpless, and men hate feeling helpless. And so every so often he'd ask me, Jane, what have you done to fix this problem? Not to nag on me, but because that's the only way he can see how he can maybe help. But one night I came home, I was super stressed because work was stressing me out. And now Michael was adding on this extra layer of stress of, hey, what did you do to work on this money issue? And I was like, I said, I'm working on it. I promise, things are moving. I'm talking to people, and for whatever reason, this is a little while ago, and I tend to forget details like this because they just don't matter, and I don't ever, it happened, and I forget about them, whatever.
Yeah, you don't need to dwell on them. Not important to your happiness.
Anyway, so whatever, the details finally happened where I was finally sitting down. I'd asked Michael, I don't want to talk about it tonight. And he says, no, we're going to talk about it tonight. And I'm like, okay. And I sit there, and I'm trying to be very patient, and sitting there, and Michael is just yelling, and he's angry. He is so angry. His face is red. He's just yelling. He's yelling. He's looking at me while he's yelling. And he's just talking about work and all the injustices that they're doing to us. And I start to cry because I feel like the way he's looking at me, he's pointing at me, he's yelling at me, he's saying you. I start crying because I start to feel like it's my fault. And he is just so angry, and I'm just crying, and I just kind of curl up in a little ball and just go into survival mode as he's just yelling and angry. It was okay. I was anyway, and then finally he took a break. He was finally done yelling, and I just stood up from the chair, and I started walking away. And this is what it got interesting. Michael flips a switch, and he says, well, what's wrong? He starts reaching for me, and he says, what's wrong, Jane? And I push him away, and I said something very hurtful. I was like, you're so self-absorbed. You can't see you can't see the stress I'm going through, because I was just so hurt. Like, work was giving me stress, and now Michael was giving me stress. It was just too much, And so Michael, anyway, it escalates after I said that. Michael starts packing up a bag like he's gonna, go to the airport and fly back to Idaho. And I had to beg him. I was crying. I was like, please don't leave. It was bad. Okay. It was so bad. And then afterward, so that was when I started learning about layers. And because I'll give the other example, and then I'll combine them both together.
Can I comment real quick?
Yes.
I love this example, because as you're telling him, I'm already seeing like, oh yeah, like it, because, I've been there too, where I'm like, oh, there's layers, and learning that can be a little painful at first, because if you're not, how do I say this? If you don't know, you don't know. And then if you are always in victim mode, then you're never going to know. And then relationships just fall apart. Right. So, and I think, it escalated. It's just like, wow, it didn't even need to escalate, but both of you misunderstood where each other was coming from. And and I wasn't surprised. He was totally oblivious to you being sad. He's just like, wait a minute, how are you suddenly sad? Like, because in his mind, he's thinking he's just mad at the situation. He's not mad at you, but the way his delivery was made it seem like he was mad at you. But because you didn't know and you misread it, then it all escalated, right? So anyway, yes.
Yeah. And so that is, so I'm a fixer. If there's a problem, I try everything I can to fix this in place so it doesn't happen again. And so after that incident, I analyzed it. I'm like, okay, because what stood out in my mind was after I stood up in the chair, started walking away, Michael went from being angry to now I'm crying and walking away. He reaches out to me and very softly he's like, "What's wrong?" Right? And it just kind of, and it confused me. Like, I thought, well, you were angry at me before, and now you're acting like you don't know what's going on. Anyway, so here's what I've discovered. Well, let me tell you my other example.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
this happened like what day is this? It's Saturday. Last week, so I typically get off work at 7. But the 2 days in a row, I got off work at 8. And that matters because I'm the one that primarily cooks the dinner. So if I'm not home to cook, Michael's not eating. and he does come to my rescue. If I say, Mike, I just can't do dinner tonight, he takes care of dinner. But we're trying, but that's just my job, right? So I got home at late. Anyway, so I got home the second night in a row at 8 o'clock, and Michael, he's mad. And he's yelling, he's saying all these things about work, and he's just angry. He's looking at me and he's just yelling. And I remembered back in December when this exact same thing happened. However, I have since learned that he wasn't mad at me. He's mad at work. And he is expressing his anger toward work. And even though 100%, an outsider looking in could 100% see that he was yelling at me, but I understood he was not yelling at me. So I stood there very calmly, listened to him, kind of smiling a little bit like, yeah, I understand. Finally, he gets it all out. He's like, oh, okay. And then he goes back to watching TV and I go back to doing my thing. So, which is a far cry from the blow up that I had in December. So, and I realized this about men. You are their bride. Okay. You might have been a bride for one day. No, you're their bride the entire marriage.
Ever. Yes.
Men love their wives so much that any little harm or perceived harm that comes their way toward their wives, men will attack it. Like, they are very protective. And so Michael so I come home from work and I'm telling him about all the problems I had at work and how much, this person frustrated me or this situation frustrated me. So he understands what's going on at work. And because I'm frustrated, he's frustrated.
Yes.
And he can't fix my problems at work. However, men are fixers. He still wants to fix the problems at work. And so, in essence, when I tell him something upsetting that happened to me at work and he starts yelling at me, he's not yelling at me. He's yelling at my job through me because that's the only way that he knows how to fix my problems for me.
Exactly.
So it is a little adorable, but yeah, realize that just because your husband's yelling at you over something you may or may have not have done, dig deeper into those layers, see the underlying layer. He
feels powerless. And when men feel powerless, they act out.
Yeah. And it may sound like they're acting out toward you, but they may not be acting out at you. They may just be angry at the situation and you are their listening ear.
Exactly.
The shoulder that we have shoulders to cry on, women do. Men have shoulders to yell at.
Yes. Yes. Oh, that's well said. Oh, I love that so much. I'm so glad.
If I'm sad, I go to Michael, I cry on him, and he makes me feel better. But same is true. Men, when they go to their women and yell at their wives,
literally criers.
Because they're not criers, they're yellers.
Also, society has taught them, or like older brothers or fathers, like don't be a wimp, don't cry, right? So what else are they gonna do but yell?
Yeah. So imagine like women do for each other, cry on each other's shoulders. Imagine your husband using your shoulder to yell at.
Right.
That way he's not yelling at you. He's just angry and mad at the situation.
Yes. And Fielding has even told me that before. Like a few years into our marriage, he was just yelling or whatever. And I think he finally depicted, I was taking that one personally. And he's just like, look, I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at the situation, just to clarify. And I was just like, thanks. I needed that clarification today. I mean, normally I get it, but then there's some days where I'm just like, I'm tired, exhausted. I can't think clearly. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh. And Michael has done that too, because other times in the past, when he starts being angry at something that happened at my work, and he sees that I'm starting to feel like scared, like he thinks I'm yelling at him, he says, no, Jane, I'm not mad at you. I'm not mad at you. And he just makes it super, super clear that he's not mad at me. And in the past, I was feeling like, I don't believe you. I still think you're mad at me because you're saying all the right words, right? That says that you're mad at me. But now that I've grown, I've matured and just understand, if he says he's not mad at me, he's not mad at me. And I will just sit there and patiently be that shoulder he can yell on until he feels better. And then we go back
You're
at
the shoulder your husband can yell on. Oh, that's so good.
because like so Michael, I know he loves me and he adores me, and he does not want anything to upset me because I'm his bride.
Yes.
And so that's the only way he can work through fix my problem, is to yell at my work through me.
That's why it's so important too, is like not to be in victimhood. Don't live there, because like there's a lot of people that aren't very emotionally strong, and they take everything personally. They're the type of people that are always apologizing for everything. You know, those people. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, so sorry. You know, and it's just like, okay, if you're one of those people, this is an opportunity every time this kind of thing happens for you to strengthen yourself emotionally. Get more of a backbone, get more of a, like, I just need to strengthen up this shoulder, you know, just like, okay, deep breath and realize, okay, he's not yelling at me. He's yelling at the situation. And he's needing my compassion and my understanding and my validation right now, not my accusations, not my tears of like, oh, I'm being attacked. You know?
Exactly. Yes. Men are literally from Mars, women are literally from Venus. Men do things that we don't understand, okay? So I've had the remarkable opportunity to learn about how a man thinks, and here's how. So I am in the Army. Females in the Army, we are an extreme minority. Like, I did a scenario, just my own statistics. Statistically, there's usually one female for every 10 males. So there's been times where I was the only female surrounded by a bunch of Army men, okay? But and so doing that, I've been able to learn about how men think. And so that's why I'm able to understand that when Michael's upset, he's not yelling at me, he's yelling at the situation.
Yeah, it's because like there was a time that building something really frustrating happened with his work. Like he had a really frustrating client or something went bad. Maybe he accidentally double booked, or a client was just being frustrated anyway, and he was about ready to leave for work, and anyway, and so he's like yelling, and he's just like getting upset at anybody who's interrupting him or whatever. And he's just like, I'm like, okay, well, and then I go to walk him out of the house, you know, like I always do, to like kiss him goodbye and do a little goodbye thing. But then he refused to kiss me, and he got in his truck and he drove away. And I was just like, the whole day I was like, oh, I'm like, what did I do? You know, but then this is the layers thing right here. He, you know, when he came home from work and what I did was like, okay, you know what? He's having a hard day. So I just, you know, I'm definitely a God-fearing woman. And I prayed to God. I was just like, Heavenly Father, please bless that he'll have a better day. Things will work out for him and he'll come home, you know, much happier than he left. And that's all I could do. Right. And so I just left it to God at that point, and just, hope for him to have a good day and send him, I love you and I hope your day works out better, type of thing, text message, one text message. But I didn't bombard him and try to be like, clingy and be like, I need to feel loved. Otherwise I can't move on today. I didn't do any of that. Instead, I just, simple messages, just all about him, not about me. And then when he came home later that day, he was feeling so much better. He said to me, just like, look, I'm really sorry I didn't kiss you when I left. I just didn't feel worthy of your kisses because of how I was acting. And I was like, oh, and I'm just like, what a sweet man. I'm like, do you know how often women take things so personally and victimize themselves? And if they would just know what was going on inside their head, they'd realize they're such a sweet, tender man. Like, we just need to look at the layers. I love that you Jane called me and she's like, I got a great idea for a podcast. I'm like, well, let's do this together. And she talked about the layers. I'm like, yes, we need to have this conversation because so many women out there, that's why so many relationships fall apart, because they're not really looking through the layers. They just see the surface and they're like, oh, well, I don't want to deal with that.
Right. Well, that's so sad. He didn't feel worthy of your kisses. And that's another thing. Men literally do not think the same as us. And so if they say something or do something that's weird, give it some time to percolate, because like you said, he came home and then told you why. So give it some time for him to confess to you what he actually meant. And it makes so much sense.
Exactly.
But he needed that time to come back and explain it better. So
exactly.
Yeah, just keep in mind that men are different than women, and we need to as long as we respect that, then we're going to have a happy, healthy marriage.
Exactly. Yes. Okay. So yeah, men have layers, and remembering that they're a shoulder to cry on, we're a shoulder to yell at. So that's a good way to think about it too. It's just like, okay, because men are problem solvers, and they don't like to feel out of control, and so they're going to try to if they can't do anything about it, then they just want to yell at the problem. They're very good at yelling at problems. So Jane, let's talk about, because I always like to teach my listeners the next step. I like to teach them, okay, so here's what you need to start practicing. Ooh. So what advice would you give to tell them, okay, here's what you need to start practicing, how to start looking through the layers or whatever? Well, one of the things I would say is whenever it's starting to happen, so one of my tools that I use is okay, taking a deep breath, and okay, calm down, don't take it personally, right? And one of the tools that I have is what I call, I guess I have a tool in my toolbox that I call the validation tool. When things starts happening, the first thing I do is okay, let's not take it personally, let's just start validating, because in that moment they need to be validated. I know, for instance, when Michael was yelling, about the whole work thing, you're just I know it sucks. And I hated that I had to come home so late. And it's just it really cuts into our time together and our dinner and whatnot. See how you're taking it, instead of taking it upon yourself, now you're switching it to put it right where he's actually angry. You're putting it on the work. You know what I mean? So that's the validation tools and kind of anyway, it's just okay, let's take what he's doing and put it where it belongs and articulate it that way. You know what I mean? So it's just
that's good. That is good. And you start paying attention, start practicing self-awareness. And I thought about this scenario to help you know the difference. If he's yelling at something that that you have no control over, and he's still angry, he's not yelling at you, he's angry at the thing you have no control over.
Yes.
So, here's a little scenario, okay? Let's say you break a plate, you drop it on the floor and it shatters, and he's yelling, he's like, you broke that, which is petty, by the way. Me and Michael never yell at each other for breaking a dish. You're just so you're aware.
But you never know.
But let's say I drop a plate and it shatters and Michael's mad. He's like, you broke that plate. He's mad at me because I broke the plate. However, if the dishwasher breaks and he starts yelling at me, I know he's not yelling at me. He's yelling at the broken dishwasher because I have no control over the broken dishwasher. So just start paying attention about, is it something you, yeah, no, great. There are things that I do wrong, that I do that upset him, or I don't do that upset him. And I know that, yes, that is toward me. And I understand he does not want that to happen again. But just start paying attention to know the difference between the things that you did or didn't do that upset him, or things that you have no control over. If you have no control over the situation, you know it, he knows it. He's mad at the problem, not at you. So just be a little bit more self-aware.
Oh, well said. And I like that. And let's say that there is a situation where he is mad at you because you broke the plate or whatever it was, and maybe it's petty and he's upset. There's also layers there too. Like, okay, maybe he is upset about and thinks that you're clumsy or whatever or anything like that. But like, really, there's layers to that too, because honestly, what kind of day did he have that day? And the plate breaking, and maybe he really liked that plate. Okay, we're gonna keep going with this. Okay? And maybe he really liked that plate and he's disappointed about the plate. But really, sometimes, and most of the time, it's not about the plate. It's just like, I'm already tired and like this is just more to have to deal with, and so he's frustrated. Or like, if he is upset at you, it's okay, you don't have to participate in that frustration. You have the power to be like, okay, and this is where I use what I call my apologetic tool. My like, I'm so sorry, I knew that I know you like that plate, and I'm just like, it, obviously, I didn't mean to, and allowing him to be upset about it, even though it's petty. But if you choose not to participate in that pettiness and you choose to take what I like to call the meek side of it, because there's masochism. So a masochist would be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And they're like crumbling inside, right? And they're just like, oh, they're so mad at me. What do I do to keep them from being mad at me? And they're panicking and everything's pushed by fear and everything, right? Meekness is grounded and everything's by love. I'm like, okay, I realize my husband's being petty right now. I realize he's upset at me because I broke the plate, even though I didn't mean to break the dumb plate, right? But he's upset about it because he's attached to that, emotionally attached to that plate, right? So it's like, okay, taking a deep breath. And this is where I use the validation and apologetic tool. Is like, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to. And then maybe he gets even more yelly, like, well, why did you even touch it? You know I like that plate, and that's just my plate. Why did you touch it? And you're just like, you're right, I'm so sorry. And just like, how clumsy of me. And I'm just like, I love you so much, and just like taking the meekness side where you're grounded, you're realizing, just like, and it's stupid. But then if you know that your man is genuinely a good man who has good intentions, who like goes to work for their family, loves their family, and generally is good, well, then you have no reason not to, use these tools and help the situation not get worse, right? Or you can participate and be like, well, you're such a jerk, I didn't mean to break this plate, and la 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 la, right? That's not necessary. But then if you have someone who's a narcissist, you're married to a narcissist or someone who's just like really out for themselves and they're yelling at you for every little thing, well, then that's a toxic relationship, right? And you don't want to be in that. But generally, most of the time, they're two good people, and one person might struggle with, being upset over silly things, and that's something I need to work on. But you can help them by manifesting to them, like, you're like, I'm so sorry, and making sure, like, you're so calm, you're so patient. I appreciate you forgiving me for breaking the plate, pulling out these things. Anyway, so yeah, these things help so that your relationship gets stronger and you're able to give grace because they're a human being. And sometimes we get mad at dumb things.
Well, true. And I mean, let's not make ourselves hypocrites. If he's mad at me for breaking the plate, I also get mad at him for doing other things too, Right? So if he's mad at me for breaking a plate, I take the grace side because I understand, well, I get mad at him sometimes too, you know. So it's both. It's not just him. It's also you. So
Exactly. And that's something that I say all the time. And I like to encourage people like, before you open your mouth to say anything or to retort back, think to yourself, what have I done similar that
Mhm.
has frustrated him? And you will think of a lot. And if you can't think of a lot, it means you're self absorbed. And then you'll realize I don't really have a right to throw any stones at him. You know what I mean? So it's just like, yeah. And you can talk like when you are upset and you do want to be able to articulate how frustrated you are or what you thought about, you can do it in an adult manner. You don't have to be childish about it. You don't have to throw insults or throw things at them. Well, last time when you did this, you know, I didn't get mad at you. Don't bring up the past. That's stupid. It drags
Yeah.
it. Stop it.
Which is why I love the podcast that you did another one the other day about, you took that snippet from one of from a movie and showed a really petty argument. Like I was like listening to that movie snippet because anyway, so I do love that you do that. Talk about, because relationships portrayed in movies are always wrong. That is
Yes.
not
Yes. That's
that
not
is
how.
not how relationships
No.
are at
And if you
all.
are mirroring those kind of relationships, well, then and stop. Stop. There's a better way always. All right. Well, Jane, thank you so much for joining me again today. It was nice having tea time with Jane and talking about layers. So don't forget to start working on those validation tools and the apologetic tools, the manifesting. And also remember, it's okay to be a shoulder to yell at.
You totally yell at. Cheers.
Cheers. Oh, you all have a good day. Rock on.
Thank you so much for joining me today, friends. I hope anything said here today was inspirational and helpful. May the rest of your day be full of awesomeness. And as always, rock on.